Hello and welcome to True Crime Daily, the podcast updates. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. The July 4th holiday should have been fun and festive for the Wisconsin couple known as Bart and Krista Halderson. Instead, the couple was violently murdered and dismembered with their remains dumped over various locations. Bart and Krista's son, Chandler Halderson, reported them missing on July 7th of 2021 and said that they went to their lake cabin but never returned. The next day, police found human remains in a rural area. The remains were identified as Bart's, and about 3 weeks later, investigators located Krista's remains. Chandler was initially arrested for providing false information, but prosecutors upgraded his charges to first-degree homicide, hiding a corpse, and mutilating a corpse. He went on trial in January of 2022. Dane County prosecutors told the jury that Chandler murdered his parents because they had discovered that he had been lying to them about his attendance at college and about his job prospects. After just 2 hours of deliberation, Chandler was convicted. In March of 2022, a judge sentenced Chandler to life in prison without parole. Let's look back at the episode where Dr. Nikki Jackson and I discussed the case. Our second case is from Wisconsin, where a man who reported his parents missing has been charged with homicide after human remains were found in the investigation. Now, the remains have been identified as this young man's father, but his mother is still missing, and obviously there are concerns for her safety. So let's look at this case. On July 7th, 2021, 23-year-old Chandler Halderson reported his parents missing. He called it in at 11:30 a.m. Chandler told investigators that his parents, Bart and Krista, and he lives with his parents, left their Windsor home on the morning of Friday, July 2nd, to go spend the holiday weekend, the July 4th weekend, at their White Lake cabin. Okay? So this is the weird part. Things start to unravel sometimes from the very beginning. And this one started to unravel when he called the cops himself. When the person who ends up being the suspect calls the authorities because they think they're so much smarter than everyone else. So he told the police that they left with a couple, but he didn't know who they were, that they just came and they picked him up. It's like, well, that's kind of weird. You generally know who your parents are going with, right? And where they're going. But okay. They checked. They asked officers in the other county to go please check the cabin. But there were no signs of the couple having been at the cabin. So now they're really worried. Did they not get to the cabin? Did something happen? So Chandler claims that his mother on July 4th sent him a text message saying that they arrived safely. So how is that possible? Because he has a text message, he says, from his mother. You can all see that this is just starting to unravel very, very, very badly. According to the criminal complaint, police interviewed Chandler at the family's home, and that evening, the detective noticed, as he's talking to him, some weird things. Pieces of the floor are missing. Pieces of the wall are missing. None of this is a good indication. So, Chandler continues to tell the police, well, I've tried to call them, and the calls are going to voicemail. So he's the concerned son, but at the same time, suspicion is starting to increase. So the following day, detectives find human remains on a rural property in Cottage Grove, which is about 15 miles away from the family home. So this will come, we're going to explain why that's going to make more sense in just a few minutes. Because, see, the son ends up leading police there. As you can see, like he's trying to tell a story, but at the same time, he's implicating himself. Apparently, the son had been seen by other neighbors and witnesses in this area that he had been driving a car in reverse with the hatch up in an open area near a wooded area. Does that make sense? So it's like where the open part is heading toward a wooded area. So who drives a car in reverse with the hatch up? It's the kind of thing that people notice and remember when all of a sudden someone's missing and you're like, hey, wait a minute, do you remember that guy or do you remember that car? So yeah, Chandler's like been leaving breadcrumbs everywhere here. Do you see where this is going, Dr. Jackson?
Yeah, it's I think when they went to the property, it was his girlfriend's mom's property, from my understanding, and they said he left for an hour, and I mean the things that they were describing to the police, were very suspicious. Like, he left for an hour, he comes back, he's like cleaning himself off. Yeah, there are big red flags there. Um,
Yeah.
that the girlfriend and the mother, I think, are going to be really big witnesses in this case, because they were the ones who were probably there when this allegedly happened, or at
Hmm.
least the disposing of the body.
And it's also possible that they may not have known what he was doing. That's entirely possible too, right? And
Absolutely. I don't think that the police are even suggesting that they knew, because they've been very forthcoming, it sounds like, too. This is the area by the shed where he was, hanging around for about an hour. This is where he was. So that's how they ended up in that area where they recovered the body, because the mother and the daughter pointed out to where Chandler had been spending that hour.
there were a lot of interesting things that were going on. I want to play a clip because this interview to me is fascinating. Before Chandler was taken into custody, while the police are alerting everyone to this missing couple, he did an interview with reporter Adam Duxter of News 3 Now. This is a great interview that this reporter did. It's an audio only interview because Chandler didn't want to have his face shown. And I hope we can link to it because I think everyone would love to hear the entire interview. We can only play a clip of it. But what's interesting here is not only his Chandler's voice, but his explanation of things. So here is Chandler in his own words explaining why his parents went to White Lake.
My last message I got from them, they were going to White Lake for the 4th of July. There's some festivities that go around there, better drink prices at bars, stuff like that for, White Lake, Wisconsin.
I think when you start saying things like, yeah, my parents went there because of the better drink prices at the bars. When your parents are missing, this is what you mention. This is what you talk about. That doesn't make any sense. You should be panicked if your parents are missing. Not talking about the price of drinks, the other things he made. Like, the reporter was very good about asking specific questions. It's like, so wait a minute, when did you hear from them, or have you called them? And then Chandler went down this rabbit hole of, well, I don't think they had a cell signal here, but at the other place they did, and this is the cellular service that they use. But I hear that someone else. I mean, he just was going off. He was drowning in the lies. It's a great interview. I highly recommend everybody listen to the whole thing because it's just so revealing. So they went to the area where they saw Chandler, driving the car, backing it up. And the police say that they found Chandler's father's remains. He's been identified as 50-year-old Bart Halderson. And according to police, he was shot to death and dismembered. So now the question is, where's the mother? And is she alive?
Right. I think that's the big question, right? Where is mom? Nobody
Yeah.
seems to know where is mom. And it's surprising that if she was also murdered, that her body wasn't recovered in the same vicinity as her husband. So
Mhm.
that's really, I think that's the big mystery. Where is mom?
Yeah. Now, the prosecutors and investigators in their news conference said something very interesting, which I didn't know how to read. Basically, they said, well, until we have evidence to the contrary, we're still searching for her and hoping that she's alive.
Right.
So
Because nobody knows.
nobody knows. That's true. I mean,
Yeah,
why?
nobody knows. And so I think that's just the party line. We're hoping to find her, and we're hoping to find her alive, because they don't know. I don't know if there's any evidence in the home that, with her DNA left behind. We don't know. The media hasn't shared that with us.
No. And as for the condition of the father's remains, apparently, remember, he was chopped up. So his torso was wrapped in pants and had a belt and a rope around it, according to the State Journal. And then a water tank nearby, detectives found scissors, a saw blade, maybe some bolt cutters as well. Chandler was then taken into custody and charged initially with providing false information and because of filing the missing persons case, which apparently was not a missing persons case. And then on July 15th, after officers had a chance to do more investigating, Chandler was charged with first-degree murder, hiding a corpse, and mutilating a corpse. He's being held on $1 million bond. And of course, his mother, Krista, is still missing. And there were just so many pieces of this whole case that just weren't making sense. Like Chandler apparently went to one of the neighbors across the street to ask if their video doorbell captures his house. He wanted to know what the scope of their video camera was. It's a weird thing to say, right?
Well, it is. But we also have to understand this is a 23-year-old. This is not, this isn't somebody who's, a seasoned, criminal or whatever. This is just a kid. This is at 23. He's really a kid. And one of the things, that we do know about kids who kill, that they're typically male, they're typically white. Parricide is a very rare crime in the United States. I think it's less than 2% of all homicides are parricides. And a double parricide is even, slimmer. So, is there such a word? But more slim. We don't see that many cases of double parricide. And again, we don't have a double parricide yet because mom is still missing. We don't know. But he really fits the characteristics of an offender who commits parricide. And again, he's not guilty yet. There's been no trial. This is such a rare crime. It is so rare. But he does meet the characteristics, like to a T, of somebody who would commit this crime. I mean, we do know that boys who kill their father will use a firearm. They're angry, and we know mutilation often comes out of anger or to move the body easier. Just looking at his pictures, he's not a big kid. He looks like he's a pretty small kid, and dad was much bigger. So you wonder how that all even happened.
I know the picture of the parents. There's this lovely picture of the two of them. I mean, they look like the nicest people ever, right? They just look, and no one deserves to be treated this way. But it's just, sometimes you just get an energy of a person, right?
Right.
So, but we don't know what was going on in the household, so I can't say anything. I have no idea what was going on here. But clearly, this young man has told a lot of lies. Whether or not he committed this murder will be determined by a jury or a judge, but clearly a lot of the things he said absolutely did not happen. There was no couple that came to pick him up, because that was the other thing. The reporter who was doing the audio only interview said, well, did you see your parents leave? Oh no, I get up at 6 a.m. to feed the dogs. I have to feed the dogs at a certain time, and they had left already. Like he had his routine answer for everything. Nothing made sense. Nothing made sense in this case. So
the kids who kill, typically, they have no criminal history. So they're not, they don't know what they're supposed to say because they don't really think these things through, Dr. Heidi has come up with a typology of 3 types of kids who commit parricide. Okay. One is the severely abused child, which I don't think is this young man. The second is a severely mentally ill child. And then the third type of child who commits parricide is the dangerously antisocial child. So when you have somebody at 23 years of age, they typically are not your severely abused child. They're usually younger and, they've been sexually abused or physically abused or emotionally abused or all of the above, and they just kill to get rid of that abuse, right? That's why they kill. Then you have the severely mentally ill child. They have some kind of a psychosis, all right? that's breeding within them. They suffer from severe depression. And that can lead to, murdering your parent, whatever, you're angry about within yourself, you can then reflect it on your parent. Then you have the dangerously antisocial kid. And this kind of kid, this murderer, is somebody who's killing for a purpose, greed, like the Menendez brothers, right? They killed for money. And so this kid, I don't think, just from what we've been reading and what I'm hearing from you, Anna, it doesn't sound like there was a motive of greed. It doesn't sound like parents were abusing this kid. He really seems like he fits in Dr. Heidi's second category, which is the mentally ill. Now, again, it's all speculation, but just from a cursory, view of this kid in this case, that's what it would appear to me.
Well, I think we're going to find out soon enough because he's in custody. He's not going anywhere. And the district attorney has said that at this point we have, quote, an extremely complex situation. Because remember, the mother's missing. We don't know what's going on with the mother. Is she presumed dead? Is she alive? We have no idea. And then he went on, the district attorney went on to say that the defendant had 6 days to hide his evidence of this crime and that he lied repeatedly. I'm going to make the argument that while 6 days is a long time, it's not nearly months or years where other evidence can be destroyed or just not retained as far as shopping for items to help kill, surveillance videos either at convenience stores or from traffic cameras or neighbors. So actually, while 6 days is a long time to destroy evidence, it's still not that long, in my opinion.